All right, today we're going to go over cosine law, and we're actually only going to be solving for a side of a triangle. Okay, you can use cosine law to solve for an angle, but today we're just going to focus on the side. Now, this is a formula, and in your textbook they've given you this formula 3 different ways, where one of them has the C on the outside. That's the one I like to use. They have one with the A on the outside, which means this would be a B, and this would be a C, and this would be an A. And then another one with B, so this would be A, this would be C, and this would be B, which is confusing to remember all 3 of them. They're all the exact same formula. It's much simpler to remember the one set and just rename our triangle to suit our needs. So in cosine law, we're going to solve for one of 2 things. Today we're going to strictly focus on the side. So if we're looking for the side, this wants to be our variable. The side on the outside of the equation, on the left part of the equal sign. Our next lesson will eventually go into solving for an angle, and that would be this here. This will end up being our variable, or our angle. But today we'll focus on just solving for this unknown. Now you guys already know the rules of the triangle. Whatever I name it, the opposite side needs to be the corresponding to that angle. So if this is angle A, this is side A. This would be side C, and this would be side B. Okay? So, what we're going to do is all of these sides correspond, as you guys can see. C and C refers to, here's our side C, this refers to angle C. And then the small a and b are strictly sides. Okay? We're only talking about sides of the triangle. We're not dealing with the angles. There's only one angle in cosine law. So we're going to get a question here and test this out. So here we have an example we've just made up. Okay? This triangle has been named HRB. Okay? And we have sides of a triangle. Now, previously we learned sine law. And technically it is a little simpler to use sine law if you got the hang of it. So let's check to see if we can use sine law. What do I need in order to use sine law?
Either A, B, or C.
Okay, so we need a complete ratio. In other words, what Teddy's saying is if we have an angle, we need to have a measurement of the opposite side. Okay? Well, for angle H, we have a measurement, but we don't have anything for a side H. I don't have anything for an angle B, but I have side B. I don't have anything for angle R, but I have a side R. And because I only have one angle, I can't subtract from 180 to figure out the other 2. So sine law we're kind of stuck on. I can't do anything with this right now. So that's when we revert to cosine law. Now, again, cosine law, I'll write it out again for you, is c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared, plus b squared, minus 2ab cos c. That's 4.2. Okay? Since it's in ABC, what I want you guys to do is simply rename the triangle. Now, what we're going to do in this triangle is we're going to solve for our unknown side, the one side that's missing. When you rename the triangle, in sine law it really didn't matter where you put A, B, and C. For cosine law, there is one thing I want you guys to do. Whatever the unknown side is, or angle, I want you to call that C. Okay? That way we only have to memorize this set of the formula, because this formula always solves for the C. Okay? So whatever the unknown side or angle is, call that C. And then from there you can call whatever you like A and B. So we'll call this A, so this means this is side A. And we'll call this B, which means this is side B. Okay? These will be our side B's, and these will be our side A measurements. We'll be plugging in for those. Okay, so very important. When we go to rename this triangle, whether we're looking for the angle or the side, we'll just call that C. It'll help us. That way we only have to memorize one formula for cosine law. From here we're going to plug in all of our information. Okay? So side C is what in this case? Unknown, we call it x, right? So x squared is equal to, what's side A? 4.5. So 4.5 squared plus what's side B? 4.2 squared minus 2 times 4.5 times 4.2. And then this is technically times cos, what's angle C? 26. Okay. So there's all of our information. Once we have all the information inputted, it's just following BEDMAS. It's actually not the hardest formula to work with. We don't really have any fractions. We just strictly go to solving for our unknown x. Okay? So if this is our unknown x, we obviously want to isolate x, get it by itself. So let's work through this. 4.5 squared. Let's bring up our calculator. 4.5 squared, 20.25. Great. Plus 4.2 squared, 17.64. Okay. Now, when multiplying this, I want you to see this as -2 multiplied by positive values. Okay. So that's like a -2 multiplied by 4.5 multiplied by 4.2. So, -2 times 4.5 times 4.2. -37.8. Or in other words, subtract 37.8 times. We're still multiplied by our cos 26. Now, this is a very common error, and we'll write x squared in here. We now have what looks like 4 terms, but it's really only 3. Here's 1, 2, and this is a term in itself. Okay? And the reason we call this a term in itself is, according to BEDMAS, I have to deal with multiplication first. I cannot add these two together and then subtract by this. The reason being is -37.8 needs to be multiplied by cos 26 before I can do anything else. Okay? So, I'm actually going to go about equating that. We take that value, -37.8, and we're going to multiply by cos 26, which is equal to -33.97. So now that changes our question. We have x squared is equal to 20.25 plus 17.64 minus, what did it say? 33.97. Minus 33.97. Now, I have a term plus a term minus just a term. I can put these all together, okay? That's a very common error. Try not to make that. Do not just subtract these 3 from each other because you need to multiply by cos 26 first. From there, we're going to add up all of our terms. So that plus 17.64 plus 20.25, 3.91. So x squared is equal to 3.91. Are we finished?
No, we have to square root it.
That's right. We need to square root both sides. Okay. This becomes x. And the root of this, 1.97. So in other words, our side x was 1.97 kilometers across. Okay. So really, it's just working out that one formula. Setting it up is the hard part. Okay? Setting it up, making sure we go through BEDMAS correctly, and that's it, to solve for a side using cosine law.